Hello and welcome to a look at Football Manager 2 for the Commodore 64, a game that was released by Addictive Games. Now, you would probably expect that in a title called Football Manager that you would be managing a football team, and you would be quite right in that assessment. As you load up the game, you will have to pick a team, or in my case, not pick several teams before I got to the team I wanted to manage. I always manage Hereford for some reason. I just like the name of it. Not given an option to pick a team directly, but having to say no to several teams before you find the team you want is a good start, you could argue. Then you have to approve or deny a sponsorship of whatever kind and then choose your skill level. Because I'm a coward, I just play at the lowest skill level. And then you get a fixture. And then you get your next match. What you'll see on the team setup listing is your opponent in whatever um, area, defense, midfield, or attack. And then you have to select players that you find to be useful in counter positions in order to challenge whatever the opponent is serving up. So you choose defenders in your defensive, but the opponent's attacking area, and attackers in your attacking, but opponent's defensive area, and so on. You have goalkeepers, you have defenders, you have midfielders, and then you have attackers as players, and you can happily put um, midfielders in goal if you want, for some bizarre odd reason. But each player has two statistics. They have a general skill statistic, and then they have their fitness statistics. And then you can look at your opponent's whatever and try to outskill the opponent in that particular field in order to get an advantage in the match. Those two numbers, the skill and fitness, is or they are, I should say, what drives the game's semi-random solution of the matches. Skill is the predominant factor. A low skill, high fitness player will always be bested by a high skill but low fitness player. Unless that player just happens to be injured, of course, but skill is the defining factor. The fitness improves that player's chance of doing something useful and energetically and things like that, but by and large, the skill is the overriding factor. And then you basically, once you've set your team up, you let the match play, and then you will sometimes find that even though your midfield has a much higher strength than your opponent's midfield, then your midfield is going to lose the ball every single time. But I suppose, I mean, that can happen in real life football as well, so it's not a given. But it is definitely likely due to the very low difficulty. A almost surefire way of winning matches is just to, I'm saying just to make sure that your team has higher overall skill than your opponent's team. Once a match is resolved, you will get a revenue overview based on income from ticket sales, sales of players, expenses, player wages, uh, purchase of players, and things like that. And then, of course, you will get a total. I assume it's because of the lower difficulty level that start with a fairly hefty budget of £500,000. Then you get the option to, after getting an overview of any potentially injured players, you get the option to sell players. And in this particular game, just like in the first Football Manager, there's no need for loyalty. You just sell someone who's got low skill and buy someone who's got high skill, because after you have chosen whether you want to sell a player or not, then you have the option to buy a select few players, and you probably want to make sure that you have enough players in the different sections so you can replace any potentially injured players. And then again, it's up to the match thing. Set up the team against your opposing team even, and rinse and repeat. Covering the technical side of this title feels almost rude, but I guess I sort of should. Graphically, for a game of this type and age, the graphics are serviceable, and there's not an awful lot more to say about them. They are a bit chunky and a bit choppy, but for Football Manager game of this age, having any sort of animated outcome of a football match is definitely a plus. So, yeah, that's a set. Serviceable. Music, there's no music, so that's incredibly easy to cover. And the few sound effects are incredibly bare bone and rather sparse. So there's very little to talk about with regards to the sound in general. You control things with the joystick, and while the controls themselves are fairly intuitive, having to set up the team for every single match is supposedly a kind of cute of an idea, but I do find it to be incredibly tedious. Now, I covered the original Football Manager for the Commodore 64, also released by Addictive Games some time ago. And while the concept behind that particular title and this particular title are incredibly similar, basically the highest numbers win kind of game. In the original Football Manager, you could actually see your entire team. You could see injuries, and you could set up your team before a match. Again, trying to get as high numbers in skill and fitness as possible, and then hope that it was good enough to beat your opponent. For some bizarre reason, in this particular title, you can at no point see your entire team unless you're trying to sell players. And that complete lack of overview of the general condition of your team feels incredibly bizarre for a football management game. Addictive games definitely try to emphasize the football part of the game more so than the management part. And personally, I think it is a serious detriment to the title. Because while the football side of things is somewhat more action-ish than on the original Football Manager, it is also incredibly long-winded, and a match can take forever and a half. And going through a full season is probably going to set you back more hours than you potentially would be willing to invest in this game. Addictive Games also released a Football Manager 3, but personally I think it's a mess, so I'm not even going to bother potentially covering it at any given point. When it comes to this one, it's serviceable, it's playable, but personally, I would much rather play the faster paced original Football Manager released 2 years earlier. Thanks for watching, take care, see you next time. Bye bye for now.